On April the 12th this year, a council workman was wounded by shotgun pellets whilst lopping down a black poplar tree in the garden of Mrs. Pauline Tressman. She, until this moment, has lived a totally blameless life, but she is now charged with causing grievous bodily harm and with attempted murder.
You are Graham McKellar of 21 Down Street, Fulchester, and you're employed by the Fulchester Council in the Parks Department.
I am.
Now, what is your work, Mr. McKellar?
I'm foreman of the tree gang.
Yes, what does that involve?
Well, we look after all the trees for the council. Trimming, planting, all that sort of thing.
Yes, not just in the parks, but on the public highways, too.
Aye, and in private gardens, if they've got a preservation order on them.
Yes, that's an order under the Town and Country Planning Act of 1962. And your job is also, of course, the removal of trees when that becomes necessary for planning purposes.
Yes.
Now, will you describe the events that took place on Thursday, the 12th of April, 1973?
Well, me and the gang were out on a job. We had to take down a black poplar tree in the front garden of 17 Maybridge Avenue.
Yes, now, would this tree have a preservation order on it?
Oh, aye. But it had been overridden by order of the council. Otherwise, we couldn't have touched it.
Yes, but you had clear instructions to remove that tree.
Aye, in my hand. Signed by Mr. Jelliff of the local planning authority.
Let's go on.
Well, we got there about 8:30. It was a big tree, an all-day job. But we hadn't even started taking the tools out of the van when that lady ran out of the house and started waving her arms about and screaming.
Yes, by that lady you mean Mrs. Tressman, the accused.
Aye, her. She started crying that we hadn't to touch the tree as it had a preservation order on it. Well, I showed her my orders. Then she said that had all been changed. She'd spoken to Mr. Jelliff and that she was getting an injunction and she had a letter from the minister and I don't know what else.
Yes, but she did mention getting an injunction.
Oh, aye. She said it was going to the House of Lords. If we touched the tree, it would be treason or something. She was very excited.
Yes. So you ignored Mrs. Tressman's statements about getting an injunction and her other statements?
Aye, well, we knew it was all blether. We'd been told she'd try anything on. She'd been causing trouble for months.
Yeah, well, yes, but we only want to know what you actually saw. So you had this altercation with the accused in the garden and you refused to stop work. What then?
Well, then she went back into the house and we started getting out the rest of the gear.
Yes, I'm sorry, I should have asked you this before. How many were there of you in the tree gang?
Three, sir. My three mates and myself.
And these were?
That's George Turner, Harry Steen and Eddie Monaghan. He's the apprentice.
Yes, a close-knit team, I imagine. You all knew and liked each other well.
Oh, aye. You have to. It's a skilled job and dangerous sometimes. You have to work together like a circus act.
Yes, and on this occasion dangerous in an unexpected way.
It certainly was.
You got on with the job, and what then?
Well, then she came out of the house again carrying a jug of tea. Well, we didn't say no to that. But then she started in again saying that it was all right, we could stop work, that she'd been on to the mayor, who was a personal friend, and he was going to talk to Mr. Jelliff. So I says to her, well, when the mayor comes down here and tells me to stop, I'll stop. Then she said what was more important, big lorries trundling through and polluting everything, or the tree. She said it had been there 100 years and had more right there than any of us. Well, you get that sort of thing. You just learn to ignore it. So we started setting up the ladder and George went up and slung the rope for the saw.
And Mrs. Tressman?
Oh, it was terrible, sir. She started pulling at the men and screaming. People passing were stopping. The men working down the road were turning around and looking to see what was going on. They could hear her 100 yards away. I says to her, aren't you ashamed, a lady, making an exhibition of yourself? I said, we're going to plant you another tree further back. But no, she carried on. She took the hold of Harry and started trying to get the saw away from him. He was hitching it to the rope. So I had to pull her away. I said, if you go on like that, I'll get the police. Then she screams back, I'll kill anybody who touches that tree. And then
I'm sorry, you're quite certain she used those words, I'll kill anybody who touches that tree?
Oh, aye, she said that.
Yes, do you think she meant it?
Well, I do now.
Yes, and with some justification. But at that time, did she say it in a manner that made you think she meant it?
Well, she just said it, sir. I take no more notice of that than the rest. I wish I had now. I just turned my back and helped George fetch up the saw and get started on the main branch. Yes. Then Harry shouts out.
Yeah, just a moment. From the moment you had turned your back on Mrs. Tressman to the moment that Mr. Turner started cutting, how long would that be?
Oh, I couldn't say, sir. When you're on a job...
Yes, I mean, a minute, 2 minutes?
Well, it couldn't have been more.
Yes. And what then?
Well, then Harry shouts out, "Christ, she's got a bloody gun!" And oh, I beg your pardon, my lord.
If those were his words, Mr. McKellar, those were his words. But let me remind the public that this is no laughing matter.
And did the accused, in fact, have a gun?
Did she? She was standing at the window and waving it about and shouting, "Get away, get away."
Who was this addressed to?
To all of us.
Yes, not just to Mr. Turner.
Oh, no, he was up the tree. He couldn't do anything. So I shouted, "Get the police, get the police." And then I called on George to come down. But he just gulped. He was stuck up there on the crook of the branch.
Yes, and where were the others?
Well, they'd run out in the road behind the wall. I was standing like a fool in the open, shouting on George. Well, I don't know how long that bit lasted, but the next thing was the panda car pulling up and the officer jumping out. So I shouted to him, and just as he ran up, I heard a shot. And I swung round, and there she was, standing at the window with smoke coming out of the gun. And then I looked round, and there was George. He was hanging onto the tree. So I didn't worry about anything else. I just called the lads, and I'd started to get George down. He was bleeding, you see. Well, we were doing that when the officer ran out of the house carrying the gun. So I shouted to him, "Get a doctor." And, well, we were looking after George when the ambulance came up. I went with him to the hospital, and then on the way there...
Yes, thank you, Mr. McKellar.
Mr. McKellar, you say that when Mrs. Tressman appeared at the window for the second time, she was waving a gun.
Yes.
Not pointing it.
Well...
Well, waving isn't pointing, is it? What exactly was she doing?
Well, she was going like...
Perhaps
like
you'd show the jaw of the action. As if waving somebody away.
Yes.
And, in fact, she was shouting, "Get away, get away."
Yes.
And definitely not still pointing it.
Well, I wasn't watching that all the time.
Indeed you weren't, Mr. McKellar. You've told us that in the few seconds before the shot was fired, you were looking towards the constable who was running towards the scene.
Yes.
So that you didn't see where the gun was pointing in the moment before it was fired. It could have been down at the ground or up at the sky.
I know where the gun was pointing when it was fired.
No, you don't, Mr. McKellar, but we'll come to that later.
So I'm not sure that I understand your point, Mr. Fry. You're not disputing that the pellets from this gun hit Mr. Turner.
Indeed not, my lord, but it was a shotgun, not a rifle. It could have hit without being aimed accurately.
You are calling expert evidence on this point, Mr. Parsons?
Yes, of course, my lord.
Now, you say that the other two men were down on the ground taking cover behind the wall.
Yes.
So that naturally they didn't see what Mrs. Tressman was doing with the gun at the moment of the firing.
No.
Mr. Parsons, you are not calling these two other men or Mr. Turner?
Well, I didn't think it was necessary to establish where the gun was pointing, my lord, as the shot from it so evidently hit Mr. Turner.
This tree, Mr. McKellar, was a poplar.
No, it wasn't.
But I thought you said...
Oh, no, it's a black poplar.
Oh, I see. Perhaps you would tell the court the difference.
Well, poplar is your usual Lombardy poplar, straight and thin. You get them all over. But a black poplar is a different thing altogether. It's a great spreading tree.
Was it damaged or diseased in any way?
No, it was a healthy tree.
So it could have gone on for how long?
Oh, well, you get some nearly 400 years old.
And this was one just in its prime?
Aye. A good tree, very well formed, just coming into green.
Just coming into green. Thank you, Mr. McKellar.
I didn't like to see it cut down.
I imagine not. Thank you.
No re-examination, my lord.
You may go, Mr. Keller.
You are Constable Alan Pringle, number Y837, attached to Fulchester Police Station.
Oh, yes, sir.
And you were on duty on the morning of Thursday, 12th of April, 1973. Would you describe the events you witnessed in relation to this case? I don't think my learned friend would object to you refreshing your memory.
Oh, thank you, sir. On Thursday, the 12th of April, 1973, at approximately 9:15 a.m., I'm proceeding in a patrol car down Clarence Avenue in the direction of Maybridge Avenue. My attention was drawn to one of the roadmen working there who came running to me and shouting, Maybridge Avenue's been widened, sir.
Yes, we know that.
Well, he shouted, someone's murdering someone up there, and he pointed to the left, but I didn't take it seriously.
Why not?
Oh, he was laughing, sir. But I drove into Maybridge Avenue and I saw a van parked outside a house and some tree fellas. I mean men who fell trees, my lord.
Yes, I understand you, Constable.
A man who I now know to be Mr. McKellar was shouting and waving. I couldn't see what it was about, so I got out of the car and ran towards him. He was in the front garden. And as I went through the gate, I heard a shot. And I looked up and I saw a woman in a first-floor window with a gun in her hand and smoke coming out from the barrel. Or somebody shouted something like, she's hit Georgie, and I ran straight in the house. I found the door open, and I ran up the stairs to where I thought the woman might be, and I found her in the front bedroom at a window.
Yes, the woman you saw in the room, do you see her here in court?
Oh, yes, sir, it's it's the accused.
Yes. Go on.
Well, I shouted, drop that. And she turned to me. She'd been looking out of the window.
Yes, she still had the gun in her hand?
Yes, sir. I approached her and I took up the gun and I broke it open and a used cartridge popped out and went onto the floor. And later I found a box of cartridges there.
Yes. Just a minute. Do you produce the gun, the spent cartridges and the box of unused cartridges?
Oh. Yes.
Exhibits 1, 2 and 3. Perhaps the usher could show the exhibits to the witness, my lord. Now, are those the gun you took away, the spent cartridge, and the box of cartridges you found later?
Well, it was an Elphick 12-bore exactly like this one.
Yes, I commend your precision, Constable, but is that, in fact, not the gun?
Well,
My lord, if my learned friend will forgive me, it will save time now and later if I say that Exhibit 1, we agree, is the gun that caused the wounding of Mr. Turner, and that it was fired by Mrs. Tressman.
Now, to return to your first entry into the house, Constable, after you picked up the gun, what happened?
well, I said to the Mrs. Tressman, the accused, I said, did you fire that? And she didn't answer, so I thought I'd better go downstairs and report the incident.
With the gun?
Oh, yes, I took that with me. And outside, I saw them getting the man who had been shot out of the tree. So I first rang through for an ambulance, and then I got through to the station and reported the incident, asked them to send a squad car. And then I locked the gun in the car boot and went back upstairs to where the accused was. She was sitting on the bed. And I stayed there until the squad car arrived with the CID officers, and they took her away.
Yes, thank you.
Constable, when you first burst in upon Mrs. Tressman in her bedroom...
My lord, the witness did not say burst in.
I have ran in, Mr. Fry.
Well, I did sort of burst in, my lord. There was someone firing a gun.
I see. Thank you.
When you entered the room, then, you say Mrs. Tressman wasn't facing you at first.
Oh, no, sir. She was looking out of the window.
But then she turned towards you.
Yeah.
What was her manner? How did she seem to you? Her expression? Was she sad, angry, confused?
Oh, my lord, how can the witness have any idea the accused's emotional state?
I was distinctly asking about her behaviour.
Not very distinctly, Mr. Fry.
Thank you, my lord.
Constable, you came into the room, and she turned to you. What was the expression on her face? Was she smiling, frowning, crying?
Well, like nothing, really.
Nothing. Stunned.
Mr. Fry.
My lord, this officer is a very brave, able and observant man, but he does have a limited vocabulary. I'm trying to help, and I submit that it is quite admissible for me to ask if she appeared stunned.
Perhaps blank would be a more legitimate word. Did the accused look blank?
Well, not exactly.
Look at the accused now.
Yeah, just like that.
Well, after that, you spoke to her. You said, did you fire that? And she made no reply.
No, sir.
Didn't she seem to hear? I said seem.
Well, I don't know. She didn't say anything.
And then you were occupied in picking out the gun, going for help and so on and so forth, and you returned to the bedroom to find Mrs. Tressman sitting on the bed. How did she seem then?
Oh, she was crying.
Hysterical?
Oh, no, she was just sitting there not moving, crying.
Did you address her again?
Oh, well, I told her she'd have to come down to the station.
Did she reply?
No.
She said nothing.
Well, not exactly.
And what does that mean, Constable?
Well, she said something I couldn't quite make out what it was. Something like love and lovely and killing.
Lovely. Lovely things, perhaps? Killing the lovely things.
Oh, I couldn't say.
But something about love and killing. Thank you, Constable.
No further questions, my lord.
You may go, and I hope your superiors have taken note of your excellent behaviour in this matter.
Oh, thank you, sir.
You are Dr. Reginald Thursley of Flat 3, Jordan Court, Shirley Road, Fulchester, and also resident registrar at Penter's Memorial Hospital, Fulchester.
Yes.
Now, on Thursday, April the 12th this year, did you operate on a Mr. George Turner?
Yes, for the removal of shotgun pellets.
Yes. Would you describe the position and nature of his wounds?
Yes. I found 4 pellets, 2 in the right buttock, not deeply. One lower down that had entered the thigh slantwise and caused a lot of superficial bleeding. Again, not serious. Jolly painful, though.
Yes. What position would Mr. Turner have to be in to receive such wounds?
I judged it was because he was up a tree with his right leg bent up.
Yes, yes. And the 4th pellet?
Oh, that was the most serious. It had entered the pelvis just above the pelvis, where there's no protection by the trousers. Just a thin singlet. And it had penetrated about 1/5 of an inch. Just an inch to the right of the lumbosacral vertebra.
Yes. So they all grouped within 12 inches of each other?
About that, yes.
Yes. Now, the one you say was most serious...
No.
I'm sorry, the most serious. Why was that?
Well, it was near the spine. Also, I had to dig for it. One is always very careful when exploring near the spine.
Yes. And if it had hit the spine...
Oh, that would have been most serious. I think Mr. Turner was very lucky.
Yes, I'm sure we can all agree with that. Thank you, Dr. Thursley.
No questions, my lord? Oh, yes, just one, Doctor. How long did Mr. Turner stay in hospital?
He didn't. He went home.
He went home?
Yes.
Have you seen him since?
Oh, as a matter of fact, yes. He was lopping a tree in my road.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Dr. Thursley.
My lord, I'm afraid I'm in some embarrassment. I was hoping to call Mr. Butters.
This is the Home Office expert.
Yes, he was coming up from Stonebridge and chose perhaps unwisely to come by motor car. He telephoned to say he's had a slight accident and will be here in about 40 minutes.
I don't want to adjourn. Is this the last witness that you're calling?
Yes, and he is rather an important one, my lord.
Would the defence have any objection to this witness being heard after the defence examination?
Well, it's unfortunate, my lord, but rather than have Mrs. Tressman submit to the agony of further delay...
Yes, indeed. We'll take Mr. Butters later.
Very well, my lord.
Now, the prosecution case is incomplete at the moment, and you must bear in mind that there is still one more prosecution witness to hear. Now, this is very unusual, but I'm only doing it because this witness is an expert witness and not a witness for fact. And, of course, because the defence have no objection. Very well.
And my lord, the first witness for the defence is the accused, Pauline Edith Tressman.
Mrs. Tressman, will you please go into the box?
What is your religion?
Church of England.
Take the testament in your right hand and read aloud the words on the card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Mrs. Tressman, are you unwell?
No.
Then you must try to speak up so that the jury may hear you.
Yes, my lord.
Provide Mrs. Tressman with a glass of water, would you?
No, I don't need... Oh, thank you.
You are Pauline Edith Tressman of 17 Mayridge Avenue, Fulchester?
Yes.
You are married and living with your husband?
Yes.
What is your husband's occupation, Mrs. Tressman?
He deals in books.
I think you mean rare books, don't you? He's an antiquarian bookseller?
Yes.
How old are you, Mrs. Tressman?
I'm 53.
Have you any children?
Yes, my son and daughter.
Is either of them married?
My daughter.
Has she any children?
No.
Do you have any other occupation, I mean, apart from housekeeping?
No. That is, I sometimes help my husband with cataloguing and books and
He pays
letters.
you for that?
Yes, a little. It's for the income tax, really.
When were you married, Mrs. Tressman?
1942.
And how long have you been living in your present home, 17 Maybridge Avenue?
Since 1950. We bought it in 1950.
23 years. May I ask what made you choose it?
Well, we needed a large house. There were the children, and my husband needed a lot of room for his books.
He conducts his business from home.
Yes.
Were there any other reasons why you were attracted to it?
Well, it had a lovely garden with big trees, and in the front it was a very nice neighbourhood then.
You were very happy there for many years.
Yes.
But recently that changed, didn't it?
Well, it was the traffic. It used to be so quiet, and they started coming through the cars and the lorries, the big lorries.
All that got on your nerves?
Well, I couldn't sleep properly.
And that's been going on for how long?
Well, since it started. Since the traffic... Since they built the motor road.
The motorway link? That's 3 years.
Yeah. It's been terrible. I couldn't sleep. I felt ill and...
Did you do anything about it?
Well, I joined the association. The residents have an association.
Yes, I'm sorry. I meant about the insomnia.
Oh. Well, the doctor gave me some pills.
Did they help?
Oh, yes. I don't know. They upset me.
You were in a badly nervous state.
Yes, well, I've told you it was the traffic. I can't stand noise.
Did you take any other medical advice?
No.
None?
Well, I saw a nerve specialist.
A nerve specialist? Do you mean a psychiatrist?
I don't know what they call them.
Did the treatment help?
Well, it was a waste of time. It was just talk. She couldn't do anything about the noise, could it? And then they started on the road and the cutting and the killing.
Are you unwell, Mrs. Tressman? I could adjourn for a while.
No, I'm all right. I'm all right. I'm all right, thank you.
Does your husband's work take him much from home, Mrs. Tressman?
Yes. He's always travelling to book auctions and to customers, valuing collections.
Does your son live with you?
No, he's in Dublin. He's at the university. Oh, yes. We keep a room for when he comes home on holidays.
What does your son do?
Well, he's a lecturer, a biologist.
Yes, and your daughter, of course, is married and lives away.
Yes, in Canada.
But she used to live near you, didn't she? She and her husband?
Yes, quite near. Then they moved to Toronto.
When was this?
About a year ago.
So you're very much on your own in the house?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressman, you said a few moments ago that you had no grandchildren, but that isn't quite so, is it?
Well, I don't know what you mean. There aren't.
But there was a child.
Why do you keep going on? It's got nothing to do with it. I tell you, why do you keep going on?
I don't think you could call me impatient, Mr. Fry, but I must know to what you are leading. You seem to me to be distressing your own client without introducing anything relevant.
And all this evidence is relevant. I think at this point I should explain that my case is that Mrs. Tressman's actions, on which the charges of intended grievous bodily harm and attempted murder are based, were performed while she was in a highly nervous state, and for that reason not entirely responsible for her actions.
You are putting forward a defence of automatism.
I'm not mad! I'm not mad, if that's what you're trying to make out.
The case of the Queen against Tressman will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court.